And now, the survival show that once survived a jumping mullet and a squirrel on Donald Trump's head. In this episode, it's just you and I, so we're gonna sit down and talk about keeping you safe and sound in this crazy, mixed up world. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 160. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole. Safe and sound. Fair warning to all of you, I am getting married this coming April. Then again in November. This means to you the show will be a mix of shorts and full-length episodes up through April. I've been having some scheduling trouble recently. November shouldn't be impacted. I'm going to work as hard as I can to ensure that there is at least one show a week for y'all during the November time of insanity and craziness. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that done for now through April, but I am going to work to make these shorts as limited as possible. Just be aware of that. And in case you're wondering why there's two weddings, the short answer is April wedding is a civil wedding, just to get this show on the road. The second was due to coordinating the religious stuff and the people flying in from all over the world. That starts to get rather complicated when you have people quite literally on the other side of the globe that need to attend an event. So there's that. Now, I did say at least one show a week, which would allude to there being more than one episode a week. It's something I've been kicking around lately. I'm thinking about doing one episode a week strictly on personal and home security, much like the Safe House show I was doing. I'm still not sure what's going on with that. And I'm thinking about a listener question show. But I want your input. Your input, not do you think other people would like it? Would you like to start hearing shows like that? Additional shows? Would you like ITRH to start doing either of both of those extra weekly episodes? Tell me today in the comments section of this episode. If there's enough interest, I'll start ramping up to do both. My plan is to move the show a step closer this year toward ITRH being a full-time thing. So, moving on, for the last 6 months, I've gone without TV news. What I consumed in the way of news and what was going on in the world was strictly through reading the headlines of websites like The Drudge Report and Google News. Occasionally, something would pique my interest enough, and I'd click through to an actual story and read it. For the most part, I got what I needed to know just from the headlines. Mostly, I just wanted to know the world hadn't exploded, the zombies hadn't started rising, and nothing truly insane had gone on while I was sleeping. To get the Walking Dead and a small handful of other shows we actually watch, we'd just go through Amazon or Apple TV, and that worked well enough. Till about 4 weeks ago. I was upgrading my internet speed connection while moving into this new house. And while doing so, Jen asked if I would bring back actual television. She wanted to watch the man-hating channel, as the woman from Comcast said and laughed. Also known as Lifetime. Seriously, worst television channel ever created, ever. So we have TV again. So, and I turned on the news for the first time in 6 months. You know what I saw? Nothing. Seriously, nothing. Well, absolute and total utter nonsense is what I saw, really. All kinds of stuff's going on in the world. Good stuff, bad stuff, weird stuff. Albinos are apparently being hunted to near extinction in Africa by witch doctors. But you don't get any of that. All you get is what amounts to, I think, a dead squirrel on top of Donald Trump's head. But what we do have in the news besides that, a near literal dick swinging contest between grown man and one woman. If I understood it right, there was an actual whose is bigger thing during a debate the other night. And this is for the most powerful position in our country, arguably in the world. Seriously? Recently, someone asked me which lever I'd pull for the presidential election. I replied, I'm not going to waste my time until they add an option that says boiling hot oil for all candidates. Now, I've also been getting emails from some of y'all that can be summed up this way. Do you think X will happen if candidate Y is elected? I think this country is so far down a rat hole, it doesn't matter. They're all clowns. And it's all a big circus in the Roman sense. Actually, that may be giving clowns a bad name. I'm going to play you a short clip from a movie called Dinner with Andre. For those unfamiliar with the film, it may sound like something made today. I think the clip speaks to what most of us in the community, maybe beyond, are actually feeling. But this was made in 1981. Have a listen.
Okay, yes, we're bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks, and it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot. And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And when I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "New York, yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, "Oh, I don't think it's that way at all." He said, "I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison." And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, "This is a pine tree." He put it in my hand and he said, "Escape before it's too late." See, actually for 2 or 3 years now, Chiquita and I have had this very unpleasant feeling that we really should get out. And we really should feel like Jews in Germany in the late 30s. Get out of here. Of course, the problem is where to go, because it seems quite obvious that the whole world is going in the same direction. See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished, and that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, and that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing, and there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet.
Kind of resonates, doesn't it? Now, this may all seem rather defeatist in nature. You may have made up your mind that candidate fill in the blank name will save us all. If that's you, there's no value in me trying to convince you otherwise, so I'm not trying to today. Being done with the idea of a state is something you either come to on your own or never at all. And no one can really lead you to it. Someone can perhaps show you the door, but you have to be the one to open it for yourself. But the will X happen if Y candidate brings us to really the root message of the show as a whole. stay safe and sound. You hear it twice every episode. Now, a similar conversation came up recently with all the stuff most people are not even really paying attention to that's going on in the Middle East involving Russia. We can boil this down to, is World War III coming? The answer to that is this. Perhaps. Perhaps not. But the question you should be asking yourself is this instead. What are you going to do about it outside your circle of influence? I can blow 3 hours fighting traffic, finding parking, waiting in line to push a button for someone I think will at worst do the least damage. Or I can spend 3 hours working on my garden, working on my personal wealth, working on my personal health, interact with my community, or doing something to increase my knowledge. To me, that seems like a more productive use of my time because these are all things inside my circle of influence. And you'll only keep yourself safe by making sound decisions which impact your life. You can't worry about the decisions you made yesterday. You can only learn from them and move on. You can't worry about the decisions you'll make in the future because you don't even know what the questions are yet. What you can do is focus on today and setting yourself up with the clearest path to a good or better tomorrow. So it all goes back to basics. Do your best to ensure your access to the things you need. Here's where the prepper part comes in, right? And ensure that access for as far out as makes you feel comfortable. Now, I think you should have a minimum of 3 months, but if you're just starting out, focus on 3 days. If you prep from a standpoint of the world is going to end tomorrow, you'll only panic yourself and never actually get anything done. And the reality is the world's probably not ending tomorrow. Now, what would these things be? They'd be food, water, basic medical supplies, sanitation, security, and of course, community. We're real big on community around here. But this doesn't mean just buying and storing things. This also means getting the skills and experience to produce or procure these items. With food, specifically protein, we have hunting, fishing, and trapping. And experience acquiring a skill is something we touched on in the last farm update. But I'll give you a fresh example from something recent. I've tried fishing a few times out my backyard in the bayou. And I've tried with just about every lure in my box with no success. I even tried bacon. As a quick side note, a bayou is a slow-moving coastal river for those of you not from the South. Now, I make no claims of being an amazing fisherman. In fact, I'm not that great at it. I just like casting a line and navel gazing between casts. But I would say in general, I'm okay at it. Still, in 5 weeks, fishing twice a week, I've caught nothing. Yet, for 5 weeks, I've watched good-sized fish, maybe 12 to 16 inches in length, jumping every day, all day long. So I knew 2 things. 1, there is indeed fish in this bayou. 2, there's something really big chasing these other fish to the surface and making them jump. Finally, the other day, I see this guy kind of fishing down the bayou a piece, probably 600 yards away. My house is about 30 feet up above the bank, and the area that I'm looking out into is 15 to 20 acres. That's just wide open. So I can see easily everything going on from my I'm working chair in the den that faces the water. The first thing he does is start throwing a casting net. Then after about 15 minutes, I see him setting up 4 poles and a lawn chair. I think, okay, this guy is serious and not just some kid fooling around. After 30 minutes, he pulls what looks like a fish the size of a 5-year-old child out of the water. I'm like, damn, all right. Another 30 minutes goes by, and the guy pulls out another fish also about the size of a 5-year-old child. I think, opportunity to learn. I set down my laptop, I put on my shoes, and I go down to talk to this guy. When I get there, he's super happy to tell me all about it. Turns out the fish jumping were mullet. They're vegetarians, which I really didn't know much about mullet, so I had to go look that up. And they're a pain to catch on a hook. So there was no way I was ever most likely going to catch them. That's what he was using the casting net for. Then he used them for bait to catch 2 of the biggest catfish I have ever seen. Seriously, these things' heads had to have been like volleyballs. They were huge. It's not really much of an exaggeration or fishtail. Now, I wouldn't normally eat fish out of this bayou, but in a real pinch, it beat starving. And now I know what I was doing wrong. And that bayou is part of the reason I bought this house in the first place. The point, though, is just having a skill is not always enough. You also have to have the experience to understand how to apply the skill. Or, in some cases, you can borrow someone else's experience to ensure your success. This is true of food production, emergency medicine, water purification, sanitation, self-defense, and community also gives you the ability to borrow from someone else's experience. But to get that community, you can't be a passive armchair prepper. You need to get out and do things that are going to keep you safe and sound, whether tomorrow is the most amazing day of your life or the worst day in recorded history. I'll leave you with that for today. Show notes and the ability to comment on this episode are available at intherabbithole.com/E160. As we close out today, a few important things. First, I am going through the slow and painful process of converting each episode over to the URL format of /E and then the episode number. In this process, I'm also going through and replacing the show player for every episode with the newer, fancier player you hopefully have seen on the website recently. This also means all the episodes will be available on the site for streaming. I know some of them were cut off for a long time. That is, of course, thanks to the financial support of the Roving Horde Armada. We were able to put the show on a newer server with enough bandwidth to make this all possible. Second, if you have something to say about an episode, please put it in the comment section of that episode. I don't usually get on to you guys about things, but this has been happening a lot lately. A lot of people have been emailing me with comments specifically about episodes. I enjoy emailing back and forth with y'all, but really, if it's about an episode, it should be a group discussion on the site. If you say something about a guest, they can't really respond without a big rigmarole on their end. And well, it's not going to happen. It's not complicated. You don't have to sign up for everything. The URL to each episode is, as I said a minute ago, just /E and then the episode number. That's it. As a very short side note, Robert, I do thank you for that email about that gun information you wanted me to pass on to Jonathan. That was kind of a different thing. So I'm not talking about you, Robert. Next up, support the show by becoming part of the Roving Horde Armada. Find out about the cool benefits membership gets you by going to itrh.net. Do it today. Members just got early access to a 7-part video course I made. See, now you're starting to understand why I was wanting bigger internet speeds, or better, or greater, whatever. It's all about getting prepared in the right way. I've got roughly 60 hours into the production of this series. You get instant access when you sign up to support the show. Again, go to itrh.net. Do it today. From the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.